Yeah, welcome everybody to the sixth in our series of webinars on the foundations of cyber resilience. If you've joined us for previous topics, you'll know that those were mainly focused around the 5 pillars of the Cyber Essentials scheme. And whilst this webinar is predominantly going to be looking at effective backup provision, backups are not an assessed piece of the Cyber Essentials scheme, but they are, however, an advisory in there. And the reason we've included it in this series is we feel that it's incredibly important to have your backup strategy in place. We often see organisations where they've designed their backups around sort of fire and flood and just being able to recover a copy of their data. But typically for modern day ransomware attacks, that's just not fit for purpose anymore. So having good air-gapped immutable backups in place is going to be the difference quite often between you being able to recover from a cyber attack or not as a viable business. So I've got my colleague Stephen here from Druva today, who's going to explain about the challenges really of modern day backup solutions and how Druva address those challenges with their solutions. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Stephen.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this afternoon. So today we're going to jump into basically what Claire mentioned, looking at the backup side of things and how important they are, especially in the face of cyber resilience. So since it's the month of Halloween, we're talking about be prepared and not scared. And we're just going to sort of jump into what we see in terms of the state of the industry and what the priorities are for the customers that we speak to. And obviously front of mind for everyone is to ensure that they've got some sort of cyber response and recovery plan in place. And one of the reasons for this is obviously that this is becoming prevalent across the board. Everybody's been hit by ransomware every day, and you don't want it to be you. And as part of that, it's a challenge because there's so many moving pieces nowadays, and people are looking to protect not only their sort of data center type environments or their SaaS workloads and their endpoints and things like that, but they're also protecting new multi-cloud deployments as well. And as part of that, it's always a struggle to reduce the costs and complexity of all these different moving parts. So that's always a challenge, but now with AI becoming involved as well, people are looking to see, okay, well, what use cases can I use this for, and how can I work smarter with things like AI? But with that as well, it brings in another challenge in terms of something else where there's another risk coming into the organization in terms of access to various parts of your business too. And on top of everything else, we've just got the sort of knock-on effect from COVID, where we've still got this hybrid workforce and people working from home and people in the office and different challenges that provides. So when you combine this all together, it's a challenge in terms of the IT environment, but when you put the fact that data is growing as well, it also adds a number of risks here too. So previously you had to worry about just the idea of availability risks, but nowadays you're also having to consider things like cyber risks, user risks, and process risks as well. So things like ransomware, but also insider attacks or potential exfiltration of data. You've also got new compliance mandates, governance mandates to consider as well. So with your data growing and all these risks growing, it becomes harder and harder to manage. And that's where we start to see issues arising from data loss and potential attacks. So what we also hear a lot of is that people lack confidence when it actually comes to the fact that if they do get hit by a cyber incident. And one of the things that people may not be aware of is that backups are the most common target in terms of cyber incidents. So the first thing people do is when they attack an organization is they go after the backups. So if they get access to your environment, they'll go in and they'll target the backups and potentially delete these if they get access. And that way, when it comes to holding you to ransom, you've no last line of defense. So what we see as well is people, when they do get access, in terms of the mean time to identify and contain a breach, is it's roughly 258 days. So people could be in your environment and just sitting there watching, see what's happening before they actually get in touch with you. And during that period, they've caused all sorts of havoc within your environment as well. And when it comes to recovery, you don't have to go back 258 days to get your last clean copy of data. And when it comes to this idea of a cost to recover, the numbers we've got here are actually the business related costs. It's not actually the ransomware cost, but it's the cost to your business in terms of what's it going to cost? And again, that's going up year over year, and we can see it again this year as well. And this all kind of ties in nicely to, we mentioned sort of compliance and governance earlier. You've probably or hopefully heard of the NIS2 framework, where this is a big part of sort of regulations and frameworks going forward, where you need to sort of adhere to all these different levels of the NIS framework. And what we see is that your data now needs more than just backup. So a number of you have probably got some sort of cybersecurity tools in place, and some examples here with like Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, and Splunk can help you with specific parts of this NIST framework. But obviously in the past as well, people that might have just had a backup solution, like Claire mentioned earlier, it was just focused on the kind of the basics, sort of the third party almost. So you want to recover, but that was all it did. It wasn't really concerned with the security side of things. And then you've also got to consider things like data posture and compliance, and now the idea of data resiliency as well, especially when you go to the cloud. And what we've tried to do at Druva is, like, instead of having all these different moving parts, how we can complement your cybersecurity tools and address the data security part of that whole sort of NIS2 framework in terms of cyber resiliency. And one of the things we do with our customers is we actually start by chatting through their own sort of cyber readiness, I suppose. And we have this sort of framework we talk through, and there's 5 different levels to that. And the first one is all about, as Claire mentioned earlier, is about data immutability and having that ability to ensure your immutable backup data. And that should be the starting point for anyone when they're looking at their backup strategy nowadays. And then the second one is around backup security. So when I mentioned the idea of legacy backup and having the ability to ensure immutability of the backup infrastructure, you want to make sure that if you are running software or hardware as part of your backup infrastructure, you don't want that to be accessed so that you can't actually get access to your backup environment if they are hit by ransomware, or they've got any sort of security risks, or there's been an incident where they need to release a patch to update their own backup servers or their own backup software. And then the third level here is around cyber remediation. So if the worst comes to the worst and you are hit by some sort of cyber attack, you want to have the ability to separate your clean recovery and your clean data from your impacted data through recovery. So you don't want to be recovering impacted data back into your production environment and just starting that whole process again. And then the fourth level is around cyber investigation. So do you have the ability to investigate data related to cyber incidents to try and avoid reinfection? So it's great if you manage to recover, but you want to find out, how did this happen in the first place, and how do we avoid that happening again with a future incident? And then the final one there is just around enhanced detection. So you want to have the ability to detect compromised backups within your production data as well. So it's all about trying to see, like, okay, where do you fit in this sort of cyber competency framework, and how can we help you increase your cyber readiness as part of that process? And this is where we have this sort of sample questions where we go through with customers. And the first part is we ask around the idea of, like, okay, are you able to meet the sort of traditional 3-2-1 backup strategy without using multiple copies of your backups in multiple locations? Because even though you want to meet your sort of cyber requirements, in a lot of cases, if you follow best practices, it's also cost prohibitive for a lot of organizations. So you start creating multiple copies in multiple regions, multiple accounts, that can be a challenge for a lot of organizations as well. And then when you look at the idea of backup security, I mentioned about who has root access to the backup solution. How do you manage root access for your backup servers? What happens if somebody got access to these? How do you manage the MFA related to your backup as well? And then around cyber remediation is, like, how would you go around sort of selecting the cleanest starting point for a restore while also trying to minimize the data loss? I mentioned the sort of dwell time earlier. You have to consider these things as well when looking at the recovery process. And then around the cyber investigations piece as well, are you able to quickly identify things like unusual access from maybe geographies outside the UK, for example? If you're a UK business, why do you start to see unusual access attempts from maybe somewhere like Russia that might be looking to sort of create harm to your backups as well? And then start to think about, okay, for enhanced detection, do you have any methods or processes in place to hunt for threats that might be across your protected data that could be a proxy for primary data and allows you to search for any indicators of compromise within your backup data sets? So by having these kind of sample questions, it starts people thinking about the potential gaps they might have in their backup environment and the vital role that backups can play as part of a cyber resilience process. And when you ask yourself, like, how can you address these risks? And that's the kind of area where we start to come in and talk about the differentiators we have as a data security vendor to just your sort of traditional standard backups that you would be taking. And as Claire mentioned at the start, like the air gap backups piece should be a starting point for everyone because this is your first line of defense against ransomware. So you want to have a clean copy that's stored outside your primary environment. And we always talk about this as having something that's decoupled from your original data set. There's no point in having your backup sitting in the same environment as your primary data, because if somebody gets access to that, then you're in trouble twice. So we want to ensure that your backups are isolated from your primary environment so that there's no route between the protected resources and the encrypted protected data copy as well. And then we have this idea of the sort of rollback actions, we call it, as how do you recover from accidental or malicious backup deletions? So this is the challenge when people do this, or it could even be insider threats or attacks. And what we have within Druva is like this self-service approach to rollback and undo deletions. So you can do this within a specific time frame. You can browse your inventory of backups and look at the deletions and possibly select certain deletions to be undone or rolled back. And as part of this, from a compliance point of view, it's great because you can also receive and distribute reports on these protected entities that have been deleted. And from a governance point of view, you say, okay, we've seen this happen, and when we go in and we rectified it, and then you can pass that back up the food chain that can help meet any compliance requirements you may have. And then the idea of malware scans. So you want to be able to recover from any potential contaminated data causes, but you don't want to have the sort of reinfection challenge that comes with it as well. And what we have with the Druva solution is that you can scan your snapshots for malware and any potential indicators of compromise as part of your recovery workflow. And the benefit of this is you can then certify that you're going to be making clean restores back into the production environment as well. So these are built into the solution, and it makes it very easy to inspect your snapshots. And you can also scan with the built-in antivirus as well to look for any potential known malware. But you can also scan for hashes that you might want to use from your own forensic investigations or from any third-party intelligence you might have related to a malware incident. And another challenge, we mentioned about the dwell time earlier, and that point in time recovery and trying to sort of manually search for clean files is one of the worst things you have to do as part of a ransomware incident. And the fact that during this process, everyone is running about screaming, saying we've got a ransomware incident, nobody's doing this in a calm environment. It's a challenge, and everybody's looking to get things done as quickly as possible. And doing this in a manual way is not easy. And what we have within the Druva solution is the fact that we can automatically recover the most recent clean versions of each file from your snapshots. And this is a huge benefit to you as a customer because what we call our curated recovery basically assembles clean version of files across multiple backup copies into what we call a single curated snapshot. And that contains only the latest good copy of your data. And I think this is easier to visualize in what we do here. So like we've got all these various snapshots you can see here, and you can see from like snapshot 124 that we have here that at this stage we can see that ransomware enters the system, and then it starts to quietly encrypt files for could be potentially weeks or months. And if we look at the kind of traditional approach, then your data would be lost if we kind of traditionally just restore to the point in time prior to the attack. So that would be like the snapshot 1, 2, 3 we can see here. And if you're trying to restore the most clean version of each file, it's a manual, time-consuming process. And again, when you're under pressure, you don't want to have to be going through that whole process. And what we offer instead is, like, say, this idea where you can save time and reduce the data loss with the curated recovery. And what this does is it automatically finds the most recent clean version, as I mentioned, of each file and adds it to this single curated snapshot. So you can see from here that we're taking each of the last clean files from the snapshots that we have and combining that into the single snapshot. So you're always getting the latest, best version of uncorrupted data that you can restore back into your system. And another piece that comes with this is going back to that idea of the sort of NIST framework and working with your existing security tools. The traditional security tools don't really provide the ability to search backup data sets for threats. The data in the backups are, again, we see they're increasingly under attack in terms of ransomware and being targeted in the backups. So you need coverage for this, and the lack of that can also extend your incident response and investigation times if you're hit by an incident. And what we offer here is the ability to leverage the metadata of the backups that you have with us to search for any potential threats or indicators of compromise across your backups almost instantaneously. And you can also do this on demand. So being able to scan snapshots within a particular time frame when you think you might have some sort of issue, or search for customer provided indicators of compromise with the file metadata, it can help you contain a threat at either a file level or a snapshot level, and it can prevent you from restoring infected files back into your system. So another benefit of this is being able to destroy these kind of files from the snapshots or from quarantine snapshots, and you can then delete them as part of your remediation, which again helps from a compliance point of view, but also for getting you back up and running as quickly as possible. And another thing we didn't mention at the start, but a lot of the breaches we see and what's kind of backed up by some of the research in the industry is that a lot of these breaches, because data is all over the place, are due to compromised credentials. And because of that, backups then become a common target for these threat actors. So while this whole data security ecosystem is still evolving, like I mentioned with the threat hunting, backups are not really monitored by these security tools. So that's why we introduced the idea of what we call our managed DDR, which is data detection and response. And this is where Druva actually monitors your backups 24/7, 365 days a year for any potential threats, and we can help take action to expedite any customer response and your recovery process. So we have experts in-house that can help with incident response and provide insights for you related to any anomalous behavior we see within your backup environment. And as part of that, we provide sort of pre-built response runbooks, and we can do automatic lockdown of backups to help safeguard your data. And with this as well, having that expedited support and the experts assistance we provide, it can help your own incident response team, your backup teams during a cyber recovery incident. So it's a pretty strong message when you put it all together. And if we map this back to what we said earlier with how we can sort of increase your cyber readiness with this sort of cyber competency model, we look at the level 1 we talked about for data immutability. Now, we provide that immutability in the air gap by default for everything we do here at Druva. And when you add things like data lock on top of that, which means that once you add this to a policy for your backups, the sort of criteria for those policies can't be changed. So if you want to go ahead and change the retention period for backups, you can't do that once the data lock's been set up, which again is another way to lock down your data, ensure that people aren't going in to delete the backups. And then the idea of backup security. So we mentioned the benefits of rollback actions. So if somebody does an accidental deletion, or if there's an internal threat actor, you can actually go in and do the rollback actions to prevent them being deleted at a final level. And also the things like being able to have account locks and RBAC access, and of course MFA should be enabled for everything you do, both organizationally and for your sort of third-party vendors like ourselves. And then the level 3 of the cyber remediation. So we talked about the benefits of the curated recovery and the malware scans. So having these in your tool belt to basically say, okay, if we are hit by a cyber incident, we know that we can use these tools to get the sort of best remediation for our data, and then do it in a sort of a time-saving way, but also in the best way possible, so we don't lose any data. And then the idea of cyber investigations. So being able to actually look for indicators of compromise within your backup environment before an incident actually occurs. So you can actually see that if people do get access before anything actually happens, you can get in there and address that straight away. And you can quarantine backups for further investigations as part of that process. And then obviously with the enhanced detection is what we mentioned with the managed DDR. So that data detection and response. So having all those features that we mentioned already, but actually having somebody in your corner who can help you monitor all this on a 24/7, 365 basis, and being an extension of your IT team. We know that everyone's busy nowadays. Everyone's a generalist when it comes to IT. You've got a lot of hats you want to wear. It's nice to have somebody in your corner that knows that, okay, we know this is what we do every day. We're here to support you. Here's the sort of run books we can do. Here's the best practices you can do to make sure that we can lock everything down and get you back up and running as quickly as possible. And again, we'll share the slides after this as well, but we don't want to go through the whole slide here, but I just want to touch on a case study of an example for a customer. Again, this is anonymized. This was a ransomware incident, but it's related to a customer where they were hit by ransomware. And the key takeaways from this is that using the security features that we have, the early detection of the data deletion activity alerted the customer and activated the safe mode using our MDDR capabilities. And by doing this, we could then investigate any malicious activity and use the rollback actions to revert back changes that were made in terms of deletions of any backups within the account. And by enabling malware scanning, it actually helped execute a sort of global recovery as an extension to their IT, their SOC teams, and their incident response teams. So the results of this was they were able to restore over 200 terabytes of data fully within 24 hours. And 100% of that data was restored thanks to these advanced security features that we offer. And tying it back to the idea that this is in addition to your security tools, the fact that Druva actually identified this attack within 40 minutes before the customer's existing tools is kind of paramount to say, like, we're here to supplement that as well. It's not here to replace your security tools. It's here to add value on top of that as well. So it's nice to see that these are the kind of things we hear from our customers, and the fact that the features that we provide on top of just the basic backups can help when it comes to the cyber resilience that you need going forward in the face of all these threats that everyone is facing. So just to kind of tie it all together, the fact that Druva is a fully SaaS platform, again, it's completely cloud native. We were built from the cloud up, and it's essentially a single platform designed to provide you with data security across your entire IT landscape. So everything from your SaaS applications like Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Entra ID, and Salesforce, to your public clouds like AWS and Azure, and all the data center type resources you might be running with VMware, Nutanix, all these various types of things. And then obviously your edge devices like your laptops that still need protection as well. So having that single pane of glass without any software or hardware to maintain, anything to patch from your end, everything's, again, delivered fully as a 100% SaaS model. It means that it's less for you to worry about, and there's less moving parts that can be attacked by things like ransomware. So it's been designed from the ground up for the cloud, and again, it's been designed with data security in mind, and it's not just the backup piece. But keen to take any questions if anyone has any. If anyone's too shy just now, we can follow up offline.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stephen. That was really comprehensive view, just in terms of both the challenges that businesses typically have with their backup strategy, and ways that you can kind of mitigate it through backup as a service with you. So that was really helpful. The other thing that I would add there as well that we commonly see is that people just haven't practiced their restores at all. So we'd highly encourage you to do that. Whatever your provision is that you've got in place at the moment, make sure that you are practicing your restores to see that you can actually get back your data if you need to at any point. Feel free to take yourself off mute, because I'm conscious we covered quite a lot of info on there. If you do want to ask any questions, please feel free to do that now, either in the Q&A or in just take yourself off mute and ask. But otherwise, more than happy for you to get in contact with your Sapio account manager to get further details. We will stay on for it until past, just in case anyone's got any burning questions. I think we might be getting some. You're welcome from me. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Nobody's feeling brave today, Stephen, I don't think, on the Q&A.
It's hump day. Everyone's just trying to get through the day. It's
that's it.
but yeah, like I say, if there isn't any questions, like even if somebody comes up with something offline, yeah, like say if you're curious to see how Druva can help you, we're happy to connect. And like Claire said, if you want to reach out to your account manager, we'd be happy to schedule a discovery call and talk through your use cases in a bit more detail.
Yeah, Donna has just popped a question in the chat, actually. So where is the backup data stored? Especially want to sort of talk about the availability zones, etc.
Yeah, so the backup data is stored in what we call the Druva Cloud, and that runs on AWS. So you can choose which of the regions within the AWS framework where you would like to store that data. So again, a lot of cases, if most UK organizations want to store that in the sort of the London region, they can do that. Or if they want to have various regions across EMEA, there's also the option to choose that or choose multiple as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
No problem.
One from Alan on our CISO team. What does the time to value look like for a typical SMB?
That's a good question. Typically, because we're a sort of SaaS vendor, and again, this is one of the reasons you want to reach out, because this is actually something we go through and do a full sort of TCO analysis for you. If you're comparing this for all the sort of hardware, software, sort of licensing, sort of storage costs you would have, we can do a sort of TCO comparison with Druva, and that can vary based on a sort of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year type of contract. So it would really depend on what workload you're looking to protect and sort of what types of data you have as well. But yeah, we can certainly run through a sort of TCO comparison with you based on what you're currently doing.
Yeah, and am I right in thinking that the first backup is a full backup, and then it's incremental forever from there? So you get global deduplication at the back end, which obviously reduces your costs as well for storage.
Yeah, and again, that's sort of usually, again, you would see that value coming back fairly quickly, depending on what type of workload it is. But the value you're getting as well is also not on the cost; it's just on the risk side of things as well. So being able to maybe get rid of other types of tools because we can support certain things that others may have been doing for you, but also the fact that you mentioned the global deduplication again across your data set as a huge value add because of the way we've architected from the cloud up.
Yeah, I think the curated restore and the malware scanning as well is a real differentiator. We see time and time again where people have kind of rebuilt their environments and gone to restore from their backups and just redeployed the ransomware. So yeah. Or it takes them forever to be able to understand where the last clean copy was. And you really don't want to be doing that under high intensity pressured situations.
Exactly.
There might be something in chat. Sorry, I'm just. Nothing more in Q&A or chat at the minute. Oh, bear with me. Can Druva help me restore from backup in a different cloud to my primary?
From a different cloud. If you have data, say if you're running data in Azure, you can protect it back to AWS. Like we run in AWS, so you would be getting sort of cross cloud from there, and then you can choose to restore your data back to kind of any account within Azure. Not entirely sure that like from any cloud to another one. It's that we store everything in AWS, but there's various kind of options. Like from a disaster recovery point of view, for example, we have the ability to take sort of data from VMC and then restore it back into AWS, and then vice versa, you can bring it back again. So it would depend on the workload what you're looking to do.
Thank you. I realise we've gone slightly over time. I don't think there's any more questions in the Q&A or chat. So thank you so much for that comprehensive overview, Stephen. It's really interesting. John has just said, yeah, thanks for the overview, really interesting. Please feel free to follow up with your Sapio account managers, as we say, if you want more information on any of the functionality or anything that you've heard today, or if you want a more general conversation around sort of practicing for disaster recovery, that kind of thing. That's also something that Sapio do a lot of work around. So yeah, thanks for spending a bit of your Wednesday hump day afternoon with us. I hope it was useful, and hope to see some of you on our next one. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.